Coming to you from Michigan, USA. And listened to by people all over the planet. Get ready to be safe and sound with Sean Sparkman.
Never take your eyes off your opponent, even when you bow.
Welcome to the Safe and Sound podcast. I'm excited to have Chris Gangnier. Is that how you say it?
That's how you say it.
Hey, cool, I nailed it.
Not many people do.
Yeah, if you see it written down on paper, you're like, okay, I'm not sure what to do here.
It's French, so I understand if you have troubles with it.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. I've been really we've been trying to get this together for what, 3-4 months now?
A few.
Yeah. But the exciting thing is Chris has a very interesting business and a very interesting personal life. And I would just like you to tell people a little bit about who you are and, what you do.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I feel honored that you would invite me to your podcast and talk about me. But absolutely. So I can go as far as back as you want.
Well, let's go back, dive in, like before you owned the business, you did something pretty cool, right? What was your line of work?
I was a fireman for City of Pontiac here in Michigan, and I did that for many, many years, about 13 years. Kind of left there, retired as a lieutenant. So cool. I kind of did the ranks, was an engineer, a rookie, then a fireman, and then an engineer, and then finally a lieutenant. What a rewarding profession, I tell you. It's, when somebody calls 911, it may not be your emergency, but you go there and you're able to help them in a situation to where it's an emergent for them. Like either car accident or their loved one's dying and their house is on fire. It's very rewarding. So,
did you actually run into burning buildings?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
When people are running out, we're running in.
What was that like?
It was it's an adrenaline rush. You really get your blood pumping, and I think it takes an odd individual, or unique, I should say.
Unique?
Maybe a little bit both. Individual to kind of want to do that type of work. I would never want to be a cop. I do not want bullets flying towards me. I'm going to be running away from them.
That makes sense.
But fire, there's something about it. There's something about it that intrigues me. You'd go in and see the flames and see the progression of the fire and really take a quick moment to kind of realize and admire what it can truly do. So. The destruction that it can truly have as well. So it was very rewarding. I enjoyed it.
Do you miss it?
There's times.
Yeah.
There's times I do. It was a passion, still is in my life. But we're doing great things here today too. And because it's so rewarding here today, I probably don't miss it as much.
Good.
Yeah.
So you could just kind of dive in a little bit. Fireman, you retire, but why did you retire and what led to that decision and to kind of the transition to where you are now?
Yeah, no, great question. So there's my father started a business. It's a hemodialysis business, so acute blood therapies. He did apheresis, CRRT, which is continual renal replacement therapies, hemodialysis, peritoneal dialysis, which is through the stomach.
Just for layman's terms, if people aren't in the medical field,
gotta make sure.
Like, what does that mean?
So dialysis. Okay, so when your kidneys fail, so the function of you have two kidneys, and here's a little tidbit of information: you can live off of 1/3 of one kidney, and that's why you hear people donating kidneys. So like if significant other or somebody who donates a kidney to family or a perfect stranger, there's people that do that, which is amazing. You can live off of 1/3 of one kidney. So unfortunately, over years, they call it end-stage renal disease. So like end-stage, usually you have diabetes or a lot of comorbidities, so you're sick. Or it can just happen. There's people that are very young that end up on dialysis, unfortunately. I had a cousin at a very young age that was on dialysis. Luckily, he received a transplant and he's doing fine today.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so it's great news. So when your kidneys fail, you have to go on dialysis. So the whole function of your kidney is to filter your blood. So it takes the urine. So like the pee that when you wake up in the morning, you gotta go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
That's what your kidneys are doing. They're working. They take all the toxins out of your blood and they mix it with fluid and you excrete it. Basically, you're peeing. So when your kidneys fail, you become very toxic on the inside, and eventually, unfortunately, you would die. So the function of dialysis is basically an external kidney. We take the blood and we basically wash it. We clean it. We put it through a filter and we clean it and we give it back to that patient. And that patient can continue on with their life.
So out of curiosity, because I've never actually asked you this before, what led your dad to get into the dialysis field in the first place?
Good question. So he's a nurse. Both my parents are nurses.
Okay.
My mom was labor and delivery nurse. They're both retired. But mom was labor and delivery for many years. And my dad, he did many things in the medical field, and dialysis being one of them. He got into, later in his career, he got into more of management and realized that just wasn't for him. So he had an opportunity to kind of go back to his roots and start a dialysis company, him and a couple other people. And so they did. They started with one hospital here in Michigan, and his whole goal was for a better dialysis, providing better services to the patients that they serve and to the hospitals itself. So he started with one hospital many years ago, almost 3 decades.
So do the hospitals do it? Or because you guys come in and do it from the outside, right? So do some hospitals do it themselves, or is it a completely separate thing? I'm just
great question.
What's it like?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't understand the world of like medical, especially dialysis. So dialysis is a very unique thing. So if you're on dialysis, you may be perfectly healthy, other than you need dialysis generally three times a week. So you're going to chronic units. They call it a chronic unit. You might see it. You'll pass by it driving down the store. Sometimes they're driving down the road. Sometimes they're in like a strip mall or something. Mm-hmm. And patients will go there 3 days a week and get their dialysis. Well, when that patient is sick and they go in the hospital, they can't leave the hospital, go get their dialysis. So that service has to be performed inside of a hospital. So it's a very unique type of service. 24 hours, 365 days a year. There's on-call, emergent dialysis. So it's very hard, especially for smaller hospitals, even bigger hospitals, to be able to maintain that type of service, because the numbers will fluctuate in volumes.
Right, that makes sense.
1 month you may have 100 treatments, the next month you have 30. So how do you maintain a staff and a crew when it fluctuates so much? So a lot of times hospitals will outsource that service just because it's difficult to maintain. And when you have an outside provider, they have economy of scales, they have the resources, they have the expertise and knowledge. For example,
it's what you do.
It's what we do.
Yeah.
Like if you're in the hospital, you have one person in charge of it, and that person happens to leave, that program falls apart. But when you outsource it to a provider, they have resources that are able to fill that gap.
Cool.
Yeah.
So just to kind of paint the picture, your dad starts his business. You're a fireman. You somehow in this process decide you're going to retire and then enter into this business, or where was the transition?
There's a long transition in there. So. When I didn't tell you, but I'm from Canada. So my whole family's from Canada, and we moved over.
I haven't heard you say sorry yet.
Oh, yeah, well, there you go. You might get a couple A's in there as well. It's fading a little bit. My sorry and my A, it's fading. I've been over in the United States here for probably, 23 years now. So wow. it does
fade a little.
It comes out every so often.
But I have to make Canada jokes because Michigan is right next to Canada.
Yep.
So if you're not from Michigan, it's just kind of inbred in us that live here to make fun of, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So do you still like maple syrup? Does that fade?
Of course.
Okay.
I really like maple syrup. That's what I put in my pancakes. Though I tell you though, one of the reasons when people ask, one of the reasons why I left Canada, I tell them because I was deported because I didn't play hockey.
Oh yeah, well, that'll do it.
Yeah, my mother didn't let me play hockey growing up. It was too expensive.
It is an expensive sport.
It's an expensive sport. It's a very expensive sport. My brother got to play, but they didn't let me play.
Interesting.
Why? I don't know.
So we're back to the transition, right? So we're talking about retiring from fireman, and then what was next?
So when my dad started the company, I was young, so I had a little bit of involvement. I'd go there and help him stock shelves and stuff like that. Then through the years of the fire department, because we worked 24 hours as a fireman, I had days off. So most firemen, if they're full-time firemen, they have second jobs. So I had a second job working for my dad. I did other things as well, but I had a second job working for my dad, stocking shelves, working on machines. I became their biomed for the company, to where I repaired and maintained all the equipment. I pretty much did every aspect of the company except for actually doing dialysis.
Wow.
That's one thing I didn't get into.
No, I didn't know that you basically started at the bottom.
Right at the bottom.
Moved your way up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah. So helping him, my brother did as well, helping him build his company throughout the years.
And your brother works at the company now with you, right?
He does, yeah. And my brother-in-law.
Oh yeah, so it still kept it all in the family. Mm-hmm. But your dad, at some point along the way, ended up selling the business, right?
He did.
So what did that look like for you?
A blessing in disguise, to be honest with you. So what happened was, my dad's a little older. He was snowbird, going to Florida every 2 weeks, coming back. And it just got to a point where he was looking to retire. Well, on the day of his retirement, because he sold the company, okay, so he sold the company, and part of the deal of the sale, because he kind of wanted to retire, work less, kind of the deal of the sale was that he would stay on board and kind of run the company.
Okay.
So that gave him the opportunity to go to Florida every couple of weeks and kind of do that snowbird thing. So he ran the company, and I stayed involved for many years. I think it was 10 to 15 years.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And then on the day of his retirement, where he was going to like actually officially retire, he sold his house here in Michigan. He had an RV, and he was driving down to Florida. We got a phone call from the parent company, and they told us that they're shutting us down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it got bought out by the third largest dialysis provider, and they didn't have any operations here in Michigan, especially acutes. So there's chronics and acutes. Acutes is hospital-based, and they didn't want our portion. So they told us they were going to give our employees, which we call them team members, and the hospitals a 90-day notice. And this is something my dad built at that time over the past almost 20 years.
Right.
And I think his heart sank a little bit.
I can
You know,
imagine.
there's team members that were there since the beginning when he first started, that were employed, have families, have mortgages and bills.
Right.
And, it didn't sit well with him or myself. So him and I, being the entrepreneurs that we are, you know, I had a couple side businesses at that time, put our heads together and said, well, if they're willing to shut her down, why don't we send them an offer?
Yeah, maybe they're willing to sell.
Maybe they're willing to sell. And guess what? They did.
That's cool.
Yeah. So in 2013, we brought it back as a local family Michigan company. And all the team members stayed with us. At that time, we were 12 team members with about 4 or 5 hospitals here in Michigan. Just a small little company.
Right.
And we really had then, because the control was back to us, we really then had the opportunity to change and grow and support our team. So since then, it's been nothing but uphill.
So when you bought the company back,
Yep.
what at that point were you doing?
So my role when I purchased it, when my father and I purchased it, and my brother-in-law, because he helped broker the sale, I was then appointed as CEO.
Cool.
So my dad still wanted to retire. He's like, yeah, let's do this, but I'm going to Florida. I said, all right, we got you.
Well, that's cool.
So then I was appointed as CEO. My brother-in-law, he was kind of he had his own job. He's very smart, intellectual, graduated from MIT. So his ability for finance was extremely high. So he helped us a little bit on some of the financial aspects of it. But yeah, it was my dad and I. We kind of brought it back and moving forward.
So one of the coolest things about your company that I see from the outside is the culture.
Yeah.
Everything that you've built, because that's really come from you over the years, right?
Yeah.
So when you became CEO, when did you start to really focus on and build that out? And I assume, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, that that's a huge part of your overall growth.
Yeah, no, it's a massive part. So, all right, one day I'm a fireman, next day I'm a fireman CEO. What do I do? How do I do it? I don't have a clue. You know, I didn't go to school for business administration and all that stuff. I don't have that education. My degree was in firefighting. It's what I knew. But what I really knew is how to take care of people. Not just in an emergency setting, but how to take care of people. So I kind of implied that into Hema-Tec, into what we do here. So I started reading a lot of books, and all of a sudden I read this one book and started talking a lot about culture and core values. And my dad's old school. We never had core values, mission, vision. He was a grunt, went in there, did the work, show up. He would work all day long. He had a core group of people that worked 6 days a week because they just wanted the overtime. They worked hard. So coming into this and learning more, I'm like, what is this culture piece? Because there's many different types of CEOs. There's CEOs that are very numbers-based, very facts-based. I'm more of the visionary style. So my approach is a little bit different than somebody else. I remember my dad saying, you gotta look at those numbers. You gotta make sure those numbers are right. I finally told him one day, I'm like, Dad, I don't really care about the numbers. I care about our people. And if we do the right thing, the numbers will come. Obviously, you can't turn a blind eye to the numbers.
Sure.
Or you'll be in trouble.
Right.
But that wasn't my primary focus. So I started looking into this culture. What is a culture? What does it mean? What is core values? Why is it important? And so many companies out there, they'll put their core values up on the wall and they'll never talk about them.
If they put them up on the wall.
If they even put them on the wall.
Right.
And every interview we do, we ask the person coming in, what is your current core values with your company? I've never had one be able to answer it.
Wow.
Ever.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
So why are core values so important?
Good question. To us, there are leading principles of guiding that ship. So it's the decision making. It's the tools to be able to make a decision. So when we either have to hire somebody, terminate somebody, promote somebody, we use it based on our core values. It allows us to guide our ship and show people where we are going. It's so important that we're all on the same page, looking in the same direction of where the company's going, where it is, where it's going, and where it wants to be. I think that's so important, and those are what core values do within the company.
What I find interesting about it is we all have core values, right?
We do.
Whether you're a company or an individual.
Yep.
Most people, I find, don't even think about what your core values are.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I talked with Todd, and Todd's been
Yep.
on the podcast before. If you haven't seen
Yep.
that episode, go ahead and go back. He talks about core values
Yeah.
as well and how important they are. But I've read books as well because I'm a huge reader, and one of the interesting things is to look at yourself and figure out what are your values. Write them down. Like, there's a lot of people out there, in the self-development world that talk about taking your core values and just not from a family perspective, creating, like a family constitution or a family, here's our values, here's how we live. And you have that inside of you, no matter who you are.
Yep.
So the interesting thing is now companies like yours, and it's starting to be something over the last 10 years there are companies like yours that are doing it, right?
Yeah.
And they're seeing how important it is because now when you're hiring or whatever you're doing, you can find people that have values that are similar to yours. And then they can see, oh, I align with that. And then what does that do for the company?
Yeah, it's amazing what it does. It builds your culture. Any new team member that comes into Hema-Tec, and it's about setting the culture. So core values give direction, but it also sets the culture. So every company is going to have a culture, whether they have core values or not.
Right.
It may not be a good culture. It may be a really poor culture, but every company is going to have a culture. Core values help build that culture within the company.
So the core values shape what you want the culture to be as opposed to it just happening.
Yep.
And maybe it is or maybe it isn't
Yeah.
what you actually want.
It's guiding people's principles. It's guiding people's actions when they need to make a decision in what they're doing. So that gives them the direction. If they have to make a decision based on what's happening, it gives them that direction to help make that decision in the direction we want to go.
So I'm going to ask you a fun question. What are your core values?
Good question. So we sat down as a group, because it's not just about me, myself, and I.
Right.
We're a team. I call people teammates. I don't call them employees. Employee is somebody that works for me.
Right.
And no, that's not how we operate here. We're all part of the chain. We're all a chain, part of the wheel. There's nobody better or worse than anybody in the company. So
Just
team members,
different roles.
Different roles. Now, different roles have different pay, different expectations.
Yeah, like
and so
a
forth.
captain on a football team, but
Exactly.
everybody's got a different role, but it doesn't work unless everybody's doing their
Exactly.
job.
So just like on a football team, they're not football employees.
Right.
They're teammates. We're team members here. So when we sat down, we had a group of us, the leadership, and what's important to us? What are our core? What do we want our core values? We have an opportunity here to really work at it. It wasn't just me going to a room and writing what I think I should do. I wanted to bring the team in and say, okay, guys, what's important to us, to our core? And I think we came up with like 25 core values. Integrity, honesty, compassion, respect.
Day one employee manual. Memorize 25 core values.
And the more we got into it, the more we realized, one, nobody's going to remember this, but they're core values of anybody that's good. Like we all, like you said, we all have inherent core values inside of us.
Right.
So it's like, do we want to incorporate those or do we want to go above and beyond? So we started thinking a little bit deeper in what we do. So I'll tell you a couple. One of my favorite, we have 5, but one of my favorite one is creating extraordinary moments. Okay? So go above and beyond by creating extraordinary moments. So it just takes a little extra to be extraordinary. So we encourage our teammates out there, because they're dealing with patients, and they will be sitting bedside for 2.5, maybe 3, maybe 4 hours with a patient laying there. And you really have an opportunity to connect with that patient.
Yeah.
And to be extraordinary isn't something like, going out and doing something crazy. Sometimes it's the little thing that can be extraordinary. A smile for a patient that's having a bad day. Asking a patient, is there anything I can do for you? Or getting to know your patient. I see you're retired. What did you used to do? And then starting connecting and growing that relationship. I truly believe, laughter is probably the best medicine. We hear it. But, that's something my dad did an amazing job at. I remember going to the hospital. He'll be in a room, and he'll be in the ICU, and there's this patient there that's very, very sick. So ICU is intensive care, and these patients are extremely sick. Yeah. The family's in the room, the patient's on the, possibly dying, and there's just a ton of stress. And my dad walks into this room with these 2 big bulky machines ready to do dialysis procedure. And the family may be stressed out, tired, sad, angry. By the end of that 3-hour treatment, that family members, they're laughing, they're connecting.
He just had them rolling.
He's not
That's
a
awesome.
funny guy. He is, but he's a connector.
Yeah.
And it amazed me that he was able to go in a patient's room and really connect with people. So it was just him, his knack of conversation that made that moment extraordinary.
That's cool.
Yeah, and leaving that room, they thanked him, they gave him hugs. I saw it all the time. And that's what we encourage our people to do, is to go in and be extraordinary. We've had nurses paint the toenails and fingernails of some of our patients.
Wow.
Another nurse, it was the patient's birthday, and the family was there, and she baked a cake and brought it in.
That's super cool.
Yeah. So our team is
that changes the world of medicine, because
Yes.
at least my experience of going into a hospital or anything, I haven't gone very often, but there's been a few times I've had to go in, and it's very sterile, and people are about their job, and you'll meet occasionally somebody who's like that, but it seems like for the most part, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong because you're in the business, but it seems like it's kind of just an austere environment of, we're going to get down to business, and not saying that doctors and nurses aren't trying to do an extraordinary job of keeping people alive and healthy, like they are, but there's this if you think about it, like customer service experience that it can be a little lacking, it seems like sometimes.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. You're right there in that aspect that it's lacking, because our nurses and our team in the hospital, not just ours, but in the hospital setting, they're doing an amazing job. They're just overworked. Especially in today's environment, like post-COVID.
Oh, that makes sense.
They're understaffed, overworked. When before they had to manage 3, 4, 5 patients, they're managing 6, 7, 8 patients. It's great that hospitals are going all electronic, but now instead of being by the patient's bedside, they're by a computer putting in all that information. We've really, in this healthcare, have lost that personal touch and that connection that we have. And I know the nurses strive for that. They want that.
Right.
Unfortunately, with all the demands on the job, of having to take more patients, having to put everything in the computer and everything else that they have to do, they don't have that opportunity. Where dialysis is a very unique world. So when we go into a dialysis treatment at bedside with a patient, it's a 1-to-1.
Okay.
So our nurse and is there to do dialysis.
So they have the time.
They have the time
to
connect.
actually do it.
So we find a lot of nurses that get into dialysis and be like, wow, I really enjoy this. I can get back to why I wanted to be here. Because if we ask everybody, why do you want to become a nurse? I would say 95% of the people say, because I want to help people. I want to make a difference.
They want to serve.
They want to serve.
Yeah.
And through dialysis is a way that they can serve. They really can connect. They really can create that extraordinary moment.
Well, thank you for going into that, because I always kind of wondered if maybe that had something to do with it, or just like the environment or what. Yeah. Because from what I have noticed, like they do want to have that connection, but you're right. It seems like they're always going and doing something, or focused on the machine as opposed to the person. And it's interesting that it's the environment that has kind of created that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
So it's cool that your company gets the opportunity to do things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So going back to the core values, you had mentioned one that you love, creating extraordinary moments. Is there another one you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, we have a few of them. So let me pull out. Let me talk about coming up with every problem to have a solution.
Okay.
So that's one of our core values. If you have a problem, come with a solution. So we believe in being innovative in a company. We have to think outside the box. And I've told our team that it shouldn't just be me, myself, not the leader. Yes, I'm the visionary. I need to think outside the box, absolutely. But we want to encourage our team to be able to think outside the box. Too many times in corporations and even in the medical industry, people feel like a number. They don't feel valued and appreciated, and their voice is not heard. So having that core value, I encourage people, if you have an idea, you have a suggestion, a way to improve something, we want to hear about it. Because to be honest with you, if we have a problem, it's not me sitting behind the desk that's probably going to be the best one to solve it.
Right.
It's probably the one actually doing the job is going to have the best idea on how to solve it. But if I don't have open ears to understand and listen to them, I'm never going to solve the problem. It's never going to go away. So here at Hema-Tec, we really encourage our team to, if you have a problem, come with a solution. And sometimes, hey, I thought about it, I don't have a solution. It's acceptable. They're looking for help, and we're here to help. We're a big team. So that will promote that outside the box thinking, creative ideas, and that's part of our secret sauce, how we're a different provider, a different company.
Awesome. So you had mentioned originally 12 people in the company, right?
Yep.
What are you today?
Today we're almost about 120.
120.
120. That was 10 years ago. So it was November 2013 is when we took it back over.
So less than 10 years.
Less than 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big growth.
It's been all organic growth. And when I say organic, it's just the members of the company. So it's my dad, he's part owner, myself, my brother-in-law, and my brother. Mm-hmm. So later on that transition, we brought our brother into the company. He was also a fireman with me at the city of Pontiac.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we kind of have very similar paths.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was all organic growth. We don't have capital investors coming in, giving us, $30 million, grow your company and, give us the profits. We invest heavily into the company. So we don't take the profits really out of the company. We invest back into, paying down our debt, being financially, responsible. That's why during COVID, we got to a level of unprofitability, but we were able to get through it because we were financially responsible. We reinvested into our company. So that growth has just come organically.
I love seeing family-owned companies.
Yeah.
I'm an entrepreneur myself. Obviously, we're on a podcast right now, but it's me and my dad. We're partners in our company, and I love seeing other family-owned companies because in my mind, that's really the foundation of all business in America at some point.
Yeah, it really is.
Family-owned companies.
Yeah. It's got its challenges with anything in life. Family brings different challenges, but to be honest with you, we do very well together. And actually has improved my relationship with my dad, my brother, and my brother-in-law. So it's actually brought us together instead of tear us apart.
Well, that's cool.
Which is a great thing.
Yeah, that is awesome. Mm-hmm. So you've had all this big organic growth for over the almost 10 years now. Some people that listen to my show, they're entrepreneurs or business owners, or maybe they're thinking about wanting to get into business, and they could be a little bit younger. Or sometimes older people strike out and start a business out of nowhere. I have a few clients who are in their 60s that have gone out of nowhere. They lived a full career of 20, 30 years doing whatever they did. And now they've gone off and started some business because they wanted a new purpose in their retirement years. Yeah. So what I'm getting at is, you've had huge growth, and obviously culture was a big part of it, but what do you, as just step back, you're the entrepreneur, what were you doing during that 10 years personally to allow you to make decisions and be in the position to get that kind of growth, or not get it, but cause that type of growth within your company?
Good question. Not being afraid to take a chance and risk. In the beginning, we didn't turn down any business that came our way locally that we could provide. Obviously, I couldn't do business down in Florida or somewhere else. It was just, we're a local company. But, I didn't turn down any business. Not being afraid to take risks. And then really focusing on our people. I think that those three things kind of led us to our reputation. One of our core values is reputation means everything. And it truly does. You know, we tell our people that, you know, you're the face of Hema-Tec. When somebody's out there, you're connecting with doctors or patients, and they leave after that interaction. Do they leave with a positive interaction or a negative interaction? You know, that's your reputation, but not just your reputation, the reputation of Hema-Tec. And our growth has come through our reputation. Started from, you know, our father, you know, almost 30 years ago, you know, doing the services he was doing and providing the level of service that he was, is built our reputation. So those are some of the things that have gotten us to where we are today.
So you said not being afraid to take risks.
Yeah.
But just, I want to dive a little into that, because a lot of times people hear, oh, don't be afraid, you know, this, that. There's a lot of things out there about being fearless, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, we're not fearless. I mean, you've taken risks in your career a bunch of different times.
Oh, yeah.
Were you actually afraid, or were you not afraid?
I was afraid. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. But I don't let fear control me.
There you go.
You know, so it's okay to be afraid.
Yeah.
It's almost bad if you're not.
Right, that's kind of what I was getting at.
There's a natural feeling to like be inside you to let you know that what you're doing is risky. You need to be careful. Not stop what you're doing, but be careful of what you're doing. So fear, in essence, is a good thing as long as it doesn't control you.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask that question on purpose, because there is so much I see out there about being fearless. There's books that are written on it. In reality, we're never going to be fearless.
Yeah.
It's about managing and controlling that fear in some healthy way so that you can make a good decision. And
Correct.
it's never going to be the 100% right decision, right? But it's about making good decisions in spite of that. And it was kind of interesting. I had a conversation with my 4-year-old yesterday because he was afraid to get his toenails clipped. And we've been clipping his toenails since he was born, but I mean, he was literally having like a panic attack. Really? And so it was a long process, but it was just going through and like trying to help him understand and give him some breathing technique to, you know, be able to confront what he's afraid of and find out why, and then move past it. So
and you got through it.
Yeah, and he got through it. It took an hour. It was a good learning experience for me too.
Yeah,
you know,
I bet.
I'm very much in the self-development world like you are. I read a lot of books, listen to a lot of podcasts myself. It's kind of what inspired me to eventually, you know, be here with you doing a podcast in the first place. But I'm always interested in listening to the way that people frame things, like the actual words that we use, because words have power.
They do.
And most people, they don't necessarily think about the exact words that they're using and what it can convey. Like you're saying, you know, not afraid to take risks, because I think maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, that you and I, we want to not be afraid, right?
Yeah.
So we use a word like we're not afraid, but in reality it's, oh no, I was afraid. I was there. Yeah. And then I chose to take the risk anyway because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. It's confronting your fears. And I did that my whole life, whether it be through firefighting. I was afraid of heights during firefighting, or in the beginning of it.
Interesting.
Like, we're supposed to climb up ladders. We're supposed to work on top of roofs, and I'm afraid. You know, so I went skydiving to overcome my fear. It's important that, like I said, like you said, not letting fear control you, you control it.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it's confronting that fear.
Well, as we start to wrap this up, I just want to ask you a couple more things.
Yeah.
This year, you're doing something kind of cool. You like to run, right?
I do.
So what are you doing?
So myself and my girlfriend, we're big runners. I've done, I think 15 marathons and 20, 25 half marathons. We're just runners. Yeah, we like to run. Why? I don't know. We pay money to go run a race, and it's torture until the end of it, and then you go drink beer. It doesn't sound appetizing by any means, but we do it. So we made a goal. So we actually went to California, where my brother-in-law lives, to visit him, and we did a race out there with them. We did a half marathon. And then we did one in February in Vegas. And at the end of the race, I got down on my knee and looked at her and asked her if she wanted to do a half marathon every month with me.
You got down on a knee for that?
I did get on a knee. It was kind of funny. We had people taking pictures and like, oh my God, I'm like, we're not married. We're not getting married. Not yet, at least. So our goal for us is to do a half marathon every month.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All over the country, or say
Yeah,
here in Michigan?
we've been not all over. This month, actually this weekend coming, we're going to Suttons Bay, Michigan, so close to Traverse City.
Yeah.
Beautiful cherry country out there. So it's trail run, so it'll be very nice. Next month after that, I believe we're going to the Hamptons.
Oh, cool.
New York, so that should be. She's got some friends out there. So yeah, we're doing one in Cincy. We're doing the Detroit Free Press. So yeah, there's a couple we haven't scheduled yet, but we'll get there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One last thing I'm going to ask you. I ask everybody that comes on the show, is there something that I should have asked you that I didn't?
Ooh, well, that's a good question. There's a lot about me. I'm sure there's a lot more to tell. I guess one would be, what drives you?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So, Chris,
What's your
what drives you?
So why do you do what you do? What drives you? What's the passion behind that? You know, as anything, you know, we all wake up every day and, you know, we decide to wake up and we decide to get out of bed, and then we make the decision to make our bed, not make our bed, and then we make the decision to, you know, the next steps, whether we go work out or, so what drives us to the next step so we can continue? I see this with my job here, my responsibility as being the CEO/owner of Hema-Tec is a big responsibility. And to be able to perform dialysis, have a team to perform dialysis and do what we do in hospitals and do it better than anybody else can. You know, we're kind of changing the medical industry for dialysis. We can't change everything, we're just a small company.
Right.
But in the world of dialysis, we're really changing it, you know, to where our hospitals, they're so used to bigger providers that just don't care. And when they come in, our contracts are not contracts, they're relationships. And I tell them that. And I said, it's about a relationship and understanding that during times, you know, relationships need to grow and change. Mm-hmm. Where a contract is a piece of paper, you do this, I do that, we'll play happy in the sandbox and you pay me and I'll do your service.
Right.
Not with us, it's all about relationship based. So, you know, providing and changing that little niche in this medical world of ours and making it better, and then being able to provide for now almost 120 team members within Hema-Tec to where they can, you know, have families and have a life and enjoy coming to work and provide an environment that they enjoy coming to work and they feel valued and appreciated. That's it provides me a lot of value. That's what drives me, is making that change, because it's very humbling and it's something I truly enjoy. So I enjoy getting up to work. I enjoy the decisions we get to make because it's based on our core values.
Right.
You know, and there's three things we kind of make a decision on. Is it good for the company? Is it good for the team member? And is it good for the patient? And generally, if it's all good for all three, we're happy to make those decisions. So I think this is what drives me. I truly enjoy it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's next for Hema-Tec?
What's next for Hema-Tec? Take over the world. No, we're looking to go more. We're Michigan. We're actually the largest acute provider in Michigan, which is awesome to say. That's a huge stride. Cool. We have 26 hospitals here in Michigan, now in Toledo. The next challenge for me, which you talked about fear, next challenge, which comes with some fear involved into it, is being more, instead of a regional provider, more of a national provider. How do we take what we do here and make it and duplicate it outside?
Yeah, that's a big step.
My biggest thing was when we were a small company, we did a lot of cool stuff for our team members, and we really took care of it. And my biggest thing is when we grew, I wanted to make sure that we continued to do that. So the next growth that we have, how do we make sure that we continue to take care of our team members where they feel valued, appreciated, and they feel like they're a name and not a number? Because that's what's important. That's what's our reputation. That's how we've grown throughout these years.
Right.
How do we continue to do that and be a national company?
Cool. Well, I look forward to seeing where that goes.
Me too.
Thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah,
I thought it was a really great conversation. I learned a lot from you, and that's one of my secrets to doing the podcast in the first place, is I get to learn from the people that I interview. So if you've been watching today or listening, thank you for being part of the show. Please, like and subscribe and share it to other people. And Chris, thanks for coming on.
Thanks. I appreciate you in the invite.
Thanks for listening to Safe and Sound Radio with Sean Sparkman. If you have questions or would like to suggest a topic for future shows, contact Sean at 313-246-0000. 9278 or visit the website at www.safeandsoundretirement.net. That's www.safeandsoundretirement.net.
I must leave.